I would like to speak a few minutes about grief. Um, I think that's one of the life experiences where we definitely need a tool in our box to cope with grief. Um, Elizabeth Cooper Ross, during her lifetime, did a lot of work about the five stages of grief. First of all is denial. Second was anger. That's when we begin to say, why me? Life's not fair, or we find someone to blame. Third is the bargaining stage. This has been found to be more related to people who are in the process of loss. For example, a parent losing a child, and it's, God, if you heal my child, I will do this, or if you will help me recover, I'll do this. And it reminds me of a movie from many years ago when this fellow was way out in the ocean drowning, and he said, God, if you just let me get back to land, I will give half of my money to God. So as he was swimming back to shore, the closer he got, he started out giving 50% to God, and the closer he got to shore, it was down to about 5%. So he was definitely doing some bargaining, but we do bargaining. Um, the next stage is that of depression. Depression during grief is when reality of loss sets in. There's no denying it, and there is just a deep, dark sadness, a heavy weight. Um, as a matter of fact, many people during that stage identify feeling like they're the living dead. The next stage of grief is acceptance. Acceptance does not mean that we consider everything all right, but we just make a readjustment. This is the way it is. And David Kessler in the past few years, he does a lot of grief work, and he identified a sixth stage. He refers to that as, how do I go on now without you? That stage is an attempt to find meaning and to learn to move forward, to remember the person you lost with more love than pain. That's the point where you can begin to think about the fun times again rather than the open sadness. Many people speak of finding closure after a loss. Dr. Kessler posits that closure maybe isn't the best term, but finding meaning for the person's life that you lost. Grief is not a sign of weakness. It is not a lack of faith. One author put it, it is the price of love. Personally, I think we have all, over the past couple years, with COVID pandemic and nearly 1 million people in our country dying, and even in recent weeks with the mass killings that our nation has endured, we've seen death of innocent people, we've seen death of children, and I think at some level most of us are carrying grief with us at this moment. When we think about the term post-traumatic stress disorder, the key defining characteristic of post-traumatic stress is that you've experienced trauma. I think in today's world, we experience trauma vicariously. We watched clips of what's happened in these mass killings. We've watched clips of emergency departments treating COVID patients. I think we all are experiencing a level of grief at this point. And I wanted to mention that because I think grief is something that we carry with us, and we often are not willing perhaps to let other people see that. We put on our happy face, we put on our cloak, we put on our work hat, and we go about life as though things are quite normal when they aren't. And I think it's particularly important during grief that we take care of self. And some simple ways to do that are to share self and feelings with people we love. The tendency during grief is to isolate, and there's a moment for that. There's a time for isolation, but there's also a time to share and feel. There's a time to lean on our faith for comfort, um, and to share that faith with people of like mind. Another very important self-care tool is to allow self-time to step away from everyday regular duties. I tell my patients the only resolution whatsoever to grief is to feel what you feel when you feel it. If you need the couch, take the couch. If you need to see someone to share and to cry and to talk, find someone. If you need to go to bed this morning and cover your head back up, that's perfectly okay. Just know that we need to do all those things to process the loss, and as Dr. Kessler says, to find meaning forward. When I thought about what, his terminology, to find meaning, I'm thinking of recently Matthew McConaughey talked at a White House briefing about his contacts with the parents of Uvalde, Texas. And he said so many of the parents just want their children to be remembered. And I thought that was so significant, that the way they find meaning in the death of their child is that their child's memory will move on, what their child wanted to do in life moves on, and to remember them with more love than pain. I think he was right on the money when he made that speech. So those are just some things that struck me in regards to kind of where we are as a people, where we are in our communities, with both COVID and the State of the Union. I'll say it that way.